If someone had told me the safest place I'd ever know would be her shoulder on a quiet night, I would have smiled and pretended I didn't understand. I did. For 7 years, I've been in love with Grace. I've watched her transform from a chaotic college kid who ate cereal for dinner into a confident woman who orders expensive wine without a second thought. I know the tiny mole on her neck that only I've ever noticed. The way she bites her bottom lip when she's trying to figure something out. The sound of her laugh when she's truly happy. I know all of it. And I know I'm just her best friend, the one who has to pretend the handful of drunken kisses we've shared over the years were nothing more than a funny memory. We were sitting on her couch, tangled in a blanket, watching a movie we had both seen 100 times. Her head was on my shoulder, her leg was resting over mine, and the rhythm of her breathing was a familiar comfort. This was our normal, our private, messy world where everything made sense. "Maya," she said, her voice soft and sleepy, "are you going to marry me one day?" The question hit me like a splash of cold water. I tried to laugh, but the sound caught in my throat. I just squeezed her hand. She thought it was a joke, a tired, silly thing you say to a person you love but are not in love with. For me, it was a desperate, quiet wish I had carried for years. "I wish you wouldn't say things like that," I finally managed to say. She shifted, lifting her head to look at me, her eyes dark and half-lidded. "Why, it's just us. It's not like it means anything." Her words were a blunt force trauma to my heart. "Yeah, right. It's just us." Just then, her phone buzzed with a text. She grabbed it and smiled, a bright, genuine smile that lit up her entire face. She started typing with a frantic energy I hadn't seen a moment ago. "Guess who just texted me?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. "He says he has a surprise for me tonight, and he's taking me to Trattoria Selene we always wanted to go to. Can you help me pick out a dress, Maya?" I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. I knew what this surprise was. He had been talking to me for weeks about it. He had called me his wingman, his secret keeper. He had no idea he was talking to a woman who had a million secrets of her own, all of them about his girlfriend. I looked at Grace, at the beautiful woman who was about to get engaged by a man she loved. I looked at the way she bit her bottom lip in excitement, and I felt a wave of aching, helpless love wash over me. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to tell her that the drunk kisses meant something to me. I wanted to tell her that I had loved her for 7 years. But all I said was, "Yeah, let's find you the perfect dress." We tore through her closet, her energy a frantic, dizzying blur of excitement. She held up dresses and asked my opinion, her eyes bright with a happiness that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I gave the right answers, the ones that didn't give away the cold, quiet dread settling in my bones. "This one?" she asked, holding up a slinky black dress. "It's a little much, maybe." "It's perfect," I said, lying, my tone flat. She disappeared into the bathroom to try it on, and a wave of nausea rolled through me. I wanted to tell her not to wear it, not to go, not to say yes. When she stepped out a few minutes later, my breath snagged. The dress traced every curve, and the sight of her warm, bare skin felt like a bruise formed by our private, tangled past. She looked flawless, like someone on the brink of an engagement. "I think this is it," she said, giving a small spin. She caught my eyes in the mirror and smiled. "Thanks for the help." I only nodded. Words wouldn't come. The truth jammed in my throat, knotted together with 7 years of things I never said. An hour later, I stood in her living room, watching her shrug into her coat. She was radiant, buoyant. She kissed my cheek, an easy, friendly kiss that felt like a farewell. "I'll text you later." Then she was gone. Once the door closed, the apartment's silence roared. I stood in the center of her bedroom, her perfume still ghosting the air, and felt like I was haunting my own life. I picked up my phone, reread Ethan's message, and tossed it onto the bed. It bounced lightly, and I wanted to scream. The clock on her nightstand said 7:42 p.m. by now. Ethan was probably on one knee, The thought struck like a fist. I paced, mind spiraling, replaying every second of our 7-year friendship. It hadn't always been innocent. There were the kisses. They began as a dare back in a dorm room, stupid truth or dare. Grace, braver than all of us, leaned in and pressed her mouth to mine. Quick. Simple. Then she laughed like it meant nothing. It's just a friend kiss, Maya, she'd said. For me, it wasn't nothing. It was everything. It was the moment I understood I was lost. Then came the drunken nights. The last time was only a few weeks ago. We'd finished a movie marathon, the room heavy with everything we refused to voice. My hands were in her hair. Her breath, warm and sweet, brushed my face. She leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't a friend kiss. It was deep, hungry, full of all the words we were afraid to say out loud. When she pulled back, she gave me a small, secret smile meant only for me. By morning, she acted like it hadn't happened. I didn't forget. I stopped pacing and stared at her mirror. Her perfume bottle sat beside mine on the dresser, an intimate, quiet detail of us. My reflection looked back at me, a desperate, angry woman who had just watched the love of her life walk out to be proposed to. The hours that followed blurred, circling the room, dread gnawing, a helplessness that felt like it would hollow me out. I wanted to call her, but what would I say? Don't say yes, Grace. I'm in love with you. The words sounded ridiculous and needy, so I stayed put, a ghost in her apartment, listening to the quiet while my mind tunneled into darker, sharper places. At 11:18 p.m., the silence finally cracked. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I lunged for it. Not a call, a text. From Grace. One photo. A selfie. Her beaming. Ethan's arm hooked around her shoulders. A huge diamond blazing on her left ring finger. The caption read, "I said yes. We're engaged." My hands trembled. It felt like my world was collapsing. I stared at the bright, happy woman in the picture. The woman who should have been mine. And then another photo arrived. It was a close-up of the ring, a princess-cut diamond so big it looked like a toy. It was gaudy and ridiculous. But it wasn't about the jewelry. It was about the promise. It was about the future it sealed. A future without me. The final text came in a few seconds later. It wasn't a picture. It was just a simple message. I love you, Maya. You're the first person I wanted to tell. I sank onto the couch. The one we had been tangled up on just hours ago. The one where we had shared a kiss that meant nothing to her but had meant everything to me. I stared at the message, the words a physical ache in my chest. I wanted to be happy for her. I wanted to feel the joy she was feeling. But all I felt was a cold, quiet rage and a new, terrifying certainty. This wasn't over. I don't know how long I stayed like that, sitting on the couch in the dark, the phone heavy in my hand. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. All I know is that the next sound I heard was the jingle of keys in the lock. It was her. I scrambled off the couch and onto her bed, pulling the covers over me and turning my back to the door. I squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to be asleep. My heart was a frantic, panicked drum in my chest. I heard her kick off her heels, the thud of them hitting the floor, a small final sound in the dark. The bed dipped as she climbed in behind me. I could feel the warmth of her body, the familiar scent of her perfume mixed with wine and the cold night air. I could feel her breathing slow and steady against the back of my neck. Maya, she whispered, her voice thick and happy. Are you asleep? I didn't answer. I just held my breath, my body rigid, a statue in the dark. She shifted, and then her arm was around my waist, pulling me closer to her body. Her lips, warm and soft, were on the back of my neck. A tender, slow kiss. I felt a shiver run through my body, a desperate, traitorous need. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, trying to keep myself from turning around, trying to keep myself from giving in. Oh, I said, my voice muffled and groggy as if I had just woken up. You're back. She giggled, a happy wine-fueled sound that was both music and a dagger to my heart. Her kisses on my neck became more insistent, more playful. I have something to show you, she whispered, pulling her hand from around my waist and reaching for my hand. I led her, and she wrapped my fingers around hers. The cold weight of the metal on her left hand was a shock. It was her ring. It was huge. I could feel the sharp, precise edges of the diamond against my skin. It felt like a monument to my loss. I said, "Yes," she breathed, her voice a soft, beautiful confession. She leaned in, her lips finding my ear. "Now I want to celebrate with you." She moved, pulling herself up and over me, her body hot and heavy against mine. She was trying to kiss me, her mouth seeking mine in the dark. It was the same messy, uninhibited way she always was when she was drunk. I knew it wasn't about me. It wasn't about love. It was just a happy, intoxicated celebration, and I was the closest person to her, the only one she could be this free with. I turned my head away. "You're drunk, Grace," I said, my voice barely a whisper, thick with more emotion than I wanted to show. "I think you should just get some sleep." She pulled back a little, her breath hitching. "No," she said, her voice softer, more vulnerable. "I want to take a bath first. Will you help me?" Her question hung in the air, a small, fragile request that felt like a lifetime of unspoken things. A bath? The word echoed in my mind, a tiny, fragile plea. It was a simple request, but it was loaded with a weight I couldn't bear. It was a request for intimacy, for a kind of closeness that was a dangerous, painful territory for me. Now, she was engaged. She had just said yes to a man, and she was asking me, her best friend, to help her take a bath. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her to go to sleep, to leave me alone, to let me be angry. But I couldn't. I couldn't deny her. I knew the look in her eyes when she was like this. She was a child, a vulnerable, messy, happy child who had just gotten the thing she wanted most. And all she wanted was to share it with me. I sighed, the sound of defeat. I said, "Okay," my voice low and resigned. "Just okay, let's go." I got up and walked to the bathroom, turning on the water, hot, steamy air filling the small space. Grace was right behind me, her movements clumsy and loose. She leaned against the door frame, watching me, a slow, happy smile on her face. "Thank you, Maya," she said, her voice a soft murmur. "You're the best." I didn't answer. I just looked at the huge diamond on her finger, sparkling in the low light of the bathroom. It felt like a physical object, a barrier between us. I kept my distance, ran the water, and let the bubbles rise. When the tub was full, I shut off the tap and turned toward her. "It's ready," I said, my voice flat, my hands shoved into my pockets. She nodded and, slowly, carefully, began to undress. I turned my back, eyes fixed on the wall, my heart pounding like a frantic drum. I heard the rustle of her dress, the soft thud as it fell, the quiet sigh of her body easing into the bath. "Can you hand me that towel?" she asked, her voice a lazy drawl. Without looking, I reached for it and passed it over my shoulder. Her fingers brushed mine light, fleeting a spark that burned. "I'm going to sleep, Grace," I said, barely above a whisper, still staring at the wall. I didn't wait for an answer. I walked out of the bathroom into her bedroom, crawled back into bed, turned my back to the door, and squeezed my eyes shut. Water lapped gently behind the wall. She hummed to herself, a soft tune threaded with a happiness I could hear in every movement, every breath. It broke my heart all over again. Morning came to quiet. Sunlight striped the room through the blinds. The air felt still and cold. I woke with a pounding head, and that dull, heavy ache lodged beneath my ribs. From the bed beside me came Grace's soft breathing, a tender, painful echo of the night before. I slipped out carefully so I wouldn't wake her and got ready for work. My job as a senior digital advertising manager at Bluefern Digital was relentless, a fast, constant distraction, My days blurred into meetings, spreadsheets, and performance reports. We lived and died by our annual revenue, and I was one of the best at keeping it low and our conversion rates high. It was a world of numbers, logic, and measurable outcomes. Everything the messy, chaotic, emotional world I shared with Grace was not. I grabbed a coffee, my keys, and headed out. The pitch deck due for a new client filled my mind before I even reached the car. Work was the place I could hold the reins, the only space that felt controllable. I walked into the office still replaying the last 24 hours, trying to pin my thoughts to bullet points and budgets instead of rings and promises. Maya, you're in early. The voice pulled me back. Naomi stood by her desk with a steaming cup in hand, dark hair twisted into a messy bun. She was my coworker, another digital advertising obsessive, and she watched me over the rim of her mug with the kind of knowing look you can't dodge. She had a kind, easygoing smile that could light up a room. We were a team working side by side on some of our company's most lucrative accounts. "Hey," I said, my voice a little flat. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. "Rough night?" She laughed, a gentle, understanding sound. "Tell me about it. Coffee?" She held out a cup for me. I took it, a little surprised. "You didn't have to." "Of course I did," she said, her smile widening. "You've got that 1,000-yard stare today. You look like you've been fighting a battle." She leaned in, her voice low and conspiratorial. "Big pitch today." I shook my head, my mind still on Grace's ring, the glinting reminder of my loss. "Something like that," I mumbled. Naomi didn't press. She just nodded, her eyes lingering on me for a moment longer than they should have. She had this way of looking at me, a soft, quiet intensity that I was completely oblivious to. I just saw her as a friend, a coworker, a person who understood the insane world of digital marketing as well as I did. I had no idea that she had been fighting a battle of her own, a quiet, unspoken war in her heart, just like me. I took a sip of my coffee, the hot liquid a welcome comfort, and my mind drifted back to Grace. I wondered if she had woken up yet. I wondered what she would say. I wondered if she would remember anything at all. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of focused work, a much-needed distraction. The language of data, metrics, and conversion funnels was a shield against the pain that was still a dull throb in my chest. I was a professional, an expert, and in this world, there were no messy emotions, no unanswered questions, just numbers that either worked or didn't. Round to 10 p.m. I was staring at a complex spreadsheet trying to figure out why a new campaign was underperforming, when Naomi walked up to my desk. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. She leaned against my cubicle wall, her arms crossed over her chest. "How's it going?" "It's about all," I said, not looking up. "The numbers don't lie, but they're not telling me the whole story." She chuckled, a light, airy sound that cut through my concentration. "Sometimes you just have to step away from the battlefield to see the whole war," she said. I finally looked up at her, a small, tired smile on my face, spoken like a true strategist. She smiled back, a genuine warm smile that made me feel seen for the first time all day. Her eyes, a beautiful hazel, seemed to hold a question I couldn't quite answer. She started, shifting her weight. "I was thinking we should grab some food after work. You know, just get to know each other better. I mean, we're a team, but we've never really," she trailed off, a hint of nervousness in her voice. I was taken aback. The idea of food, of conversation, of anything beyond the safety of my cubicle felt alien. My first thought was a panicked no, a desperate need to get home and see if Grace was awake, if she would remember anything, if she would just give me a hint, a sign that our 7 years meant something. My second thought was a weary, exhausted kind of curiosity. "I'd like that," I said, a little surprised to hear the words come out of my mouth. "That would be nice." Naomi's face lit up, a brilliant, beautiful smile that made me feel seen for the first time all day. As she walked back to her desk, I found myself watching her go. I took a sip of my now cold coffee, and for the first time all day, my mind wasn't on Grace. It was on Naomi, on her gentle smile, and on the quiet, unspoken question in her eyes. I had no idea what was happening or what I was getting myself into. All I knew was that I had said yes. The Amber Noodle House was bustling and loud, a symphony of slurping noodles and happy conversation. The warm steam from the bowls was a comforting blanket, and the spicy, savory broth was a welcome shock to my taste buds. It was the perfect place to get lost and forget everything. We talked about work, about our shared frustrations with some of the more difficult clients, and our victories with the campaigns that were doing exceptionally well. I found myself laughing, genuinely laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. It was easy with Naomi. There were no hidden meanings, no painful memories, just a shared passion for our work and an effortless rhythm to our conversation. "So," she said, putting down her chopsticks and looking at me, her hazel eyes twinkling in the soft light of the restaurant. "Enough about work. Let's get to the important stuff. How's your love life? Any lucky guy or girl?" The question caught me off guard. It was so simple, so innocent, and yet it felt like a landmine. My mind immediately went to Grace, the diamond ring, the heavy, suffocating silence of the apartment this morning. I shrugged, trying to be nonchalant. "Nah, not recently. You know how it is. It's hard to find time for dating when you're a workaholic." Naomi just smiled, a knowing, almost sad smile. "I hear that," she said softly. "But what about that girl that sometimes drops you off at Bluefern Digital? The one with the really loud laugh?" My heart stopped. My mouth went dry. "Oh," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Grace, she's my best friend." Naomi just nodded, her eyes never leaving mine. She leaned in a little, her voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "I see how you look at her, Maya. The way your face lights up when you say her name. I've seen her look at you, too." She took a breath, her gaze unwavering. "Are you really sure about that?" The noise of the restaurant faded away, and it felt like we were the only two people in the room. Naomi's question was a physical presence, a weight I couldn't ignore. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, to pretend she was crazy, but I couldn't. Not when her eyes were so clear, so honest. I looked down at the table, a sudden, desperate need to hide. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. I don't know what you're talking about," I mumbled, the words feeling weak and pathetic. "Even to me." Naomi reached across the table and gently touched my hand. Her touch was warm and steady, a stark contrast to the chaotic emotions swirling inside me. "Hey," she said softly. "It's okay. You can talk to me." And just like that, the dam broke. All the pain, the loneliness, the frustration, and the secret love I had been carrying for 7 years came pouring out. I told her about Grace, about the drunken kisses that meant everything to me and nothing to her. I told her about the proposal last night, the massive diamond ring, and the way it felt like a final devastating period at the end of a sentence. She's my best friend, and I'm in love with her. I have been for so long, but I don't think she's into me like that. Naomi listened patiently, her expression unreadable. She didn't interrupt. She didn't offer platitudes. She just let me talk, let me unravel. When I was finally done, when the tears were finally starting to dry on my cheeks, she squeezed my hand again. "Maya," she said, her voice low and steady. "I get it. It hurts like hell. But maybe you should focus on other people. People who see you for who you are. People who would never let you feel like a secret." She let go of my hand, and for a moment I thought she was just going to leave it there. A kind word of advice. But then she reached over and gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Her fingers brushed against my cheek, a soft, electric touch. Her eyes, still focused on mine, held a clear, undeniable offer. "Like me," she finished, her voice a quiet, confident whisper. The words hung in the air, a small, brave confession. I didn't know what to say, my mind still reeling from the unexpected emotional outburst. I couldn't process this new information. Naomi didn't push. She just held my gaze, her expression open and honest. Finally, she broke the silence with a soft smile. "I know what will cheer you up," she said, her voice warm and kind. She sat up straight and clapped her hands together. "Let me get the bill and then we'll go." Before I could protest, she had a waiter's attention and was paying. The entire exchange was quick and efficient, a blur of motion that I barely registered. I was still stuck in a daze, replaying her words in my mind. Like me, she returned to the table, and her smile was a gentle invitation. "Come on," she said, her hand reaching for mine. "Let's get out of here." I let her lead me out of the warm, noisy restaurant and into the cool night air. Grayford was a living, breathing thing, the lights a vibrant, beautiful blur. She hailed a cab and we slid into the back seat. Grayford lights streamed past the window, a dazzling, fast-paced distraction. She was talking, her voice a low, soothing murmur, and I found myself listening, really listening for the first time. "There's this great spot a few blocks from here. It's a little secret, but it's where all the street performers go after the tourists go home. The music is amazing, and the energy is just good." When the cab stopped, the sound of music was a gentle hum in the air. As we got closer, the music got louder, richer, more vibrant. We stepped out of the cab and onto a wide open square. The square was alive with people, with music, with art. A woman with a violin was playing a hauntingly beautiful melody. A small crowd gathered around her. A man with a guitar was singing, his voice raw and powerful. A group of dancers was moving in sync, their bodies a blur of motion in the light. The air was electric with a kind of chaotic joy, a vibrant energy that was the complete opposite of the quiet, suffocating pain that I had been carrying all day. Naomi squeezed my hand. "See," she said, her voice a soft whisper in the noise. I looked at her, at the beautiful woman who had just paid for my dinner and taken me to this secret beautiful place. She wasn't asking for anything. She was just there, a kind presence, a warm hand in a world that had suddenly become cold and unforgiving. And for the first time since yesterday, I felt a flicker of something new, something that wasn't pain, something that felt a lot like hope. The energy of the square was infectious. I found myself smiling, my shoulders finally relaxing from the tense knot they had been for days. We moved through the crowd, drawn in by the sound of a blues guitarist. His voice was a soulful rasp, and his fingers moved across the fretboard with a casual practiced grace. I swayed to the music, letting the rhythm of Grayford wash over me. Naomi was right there with me, her hand still in mine, her body swaying in perfect sync with mine. We shared a look, a quiet, easy smile that was more intimate than any conversation. It was a language of touch and unspoken words, a feeling of being completely seen without having to say a thing. We lingered with the guitarist for a few more songs before moving on. A street performer juggled flaming torches, the heat biting against the cool night air. I laughed real and full, so unfamiliar it felt wonderful. In the flare of the firelight, her eyes were on me, warm and steady, and my heart fluttered in a way it hadn't in a very long time. After the juggler, we slipped into a quieter corner of the square, a small fountain where we perched on the edge, our feet skimming the cool water. The hum of Grayford faded to a distant murmur. Only Marigold Fountain's gentle splash and our soft breathing remained. "This was a great idea," I whispered. She smiled, gentle, kind, reaching all the way to her eyes. She edged closer, and the sudden warmth of her body was a welcome shock. The easy, light air between us thickened into a quiet, new intensity. "I just wanted to see you smile," she breathed. Her hand rose to my face, thumb stroking my cheek. The touch was soft, deliberate, and a slow, beautiful fire lit in my chest. I leaned into it, eyes fluttering shut. I didn't know exactly what this was, only that I didn't want it to end. It wasn't the raw, desperate ache I carried for Grace. This was steady, quiet heat, a soft, slow burn. When I opened my eyes, her face was inches from mine. The hazel in her gaze was dark and deep, a question unspoken. I didn't need words. I leaned in, and she met me halfway. The kiss was unhurried and gentle, a tender exploration. Not the drunken, frantic, messy kisses with Grace. This felt like a quiet promise. Warmth spread from my lips through my whole body. Her hand slipped from my cheek to the back of my neck, fingers threading into my hair and drawing me closer. I kissed her back, a soft, tentative answer to her question. My hands found her waist, and I pulled her closer until there was no space left between us. The kiss deepened, a new kind of fire. It was a new world, a new feeling, and I was falling into it headfirst. Her hand, which had been on my neck, moved lower, her fingers tracing a slow, deliberate path down my back, and then to the sides, her thumb caressing the soft skin of my hip. The touch was an electric shock, a sudden, powerful realization. This wasn't just a kiss. This wasn't just a moment. This was a new beginning. The warmth of Naomi's body was a comforting memory as I let myself into my apartment. Grayford was quiet now, the energy of the street performers a fading hum in my mind. The door clicked shut behind me, and I was plunged into the familiar silence of home. But it wasn't a silent home. The lights were on in the living room, and Grace was sitting on the couch, the glowing diamond on her left hand, a silent, brilliant witness to my absence. She was wearing a huge oversized t-shirt, her hair a messy halo around her head, and she had a book in her lap. She looked up when I walked in, her face a mixture of concern and irritation. "Oh, there you are," she said, her voice a little sharper than usual. "You got home very late tonight." I felt a rush of adrenaline, a sudden panicked need to hide everything that had just happened. But the feeling was quickly replaced by a new defined kind of confidence. I had been a secret for too long. I wasn't going to be one anymore. I dropped my keys on the table, the sound of a small, defiant clatter. I looked at her, at the woman who had asked me to help her pick out a dress for a proposal, and the woman who had kissed me a few weeks ago, and then pretended it never happened. I looked at the glittering ring on her finger, and felt a wave of quiet, steady calm. "I know," I said, a small, genuine laugh escaping my lips. I was on a date. Grace's eyes widened, her book forgotten on her lap. "A date with who?" "Naomi," I said, the name a soft, confident whisper. "From work. She's actually very beautiful." A sudden, fierce emotion, something I couldn't quite name, flashed across Grace's face. It was a look of disbelief, of hurt, of something I had never seen on her before. She closed her mouth, and her eyes fell to the floor, her gaze fixed on the rug. The silence was heavy, thick with everything we weren't saying, and I continued, my voice still soft but firm. "And she kissed me. It was our first date, but yeah, it happened." Grace finally looked up, her eyes wide and confused. "You're just kissing people on the first date. And how did that even happen?" "I didn't know you were seeing someone." The words tumbled out, a frantic, messy stream of questions. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't just me who had been keeping secrets. It was her, too. The air in the room was thick with all the things we weren't saying. My heart was a frantic, desperate drum against my ribs. Grace was still staring at me, her face a mask of confusion. The giant diamond on her hand, a glittering, painful focal point. The anger and hurt from earlier had faded, replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. It was time. This had to end one way or another. I took a deep breath, the air cold in my lungs. I walked over to the couch, sat down a few feet away from Grace, and looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time all night. "Grace, I want to tell you something that I think you should know." Grace just stared at me, her face a mask of confusion. "What is it, Maya? What's going on with you?" she asked, my voice barely a whisper. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, to find the right words. "Something has to change," I finally said, my goals steady and unwavering. You're going to get married, and I think we should stop the kisses, the touches, all of that. Grace's face crumpled, a look of genuine hurt flashing across her features. Why? She asked, my voice small and wounded. Maya, it's just games. It's us. The words were a physical blow, a sharp, cold jab to my heart. It's just games. The phrase was a stark, brutal reminder of how differently we viewed our relationship, our shared history. It was a reminder that what was everything to me was nothing to Grace. I felt a hot rush of emotion, a desperate need to make her understand, to make her see the truth. No, I said, my voice shaking with the force of my emotions. No, it's not. It's not a game for me. I looked at the ring again, the glittering symbol of a future that I was not a part of. And then I looked at Grace, at the beautiful, complicated woman I had loved for 7 years. It was now or never. The words, the truth, had to come out. I love you, Grace. I said the words, a quiet, raw confession in the silent room. Tears were starting to well up in Grace's eyes, and she just shook her head, a silent, helpless gesture. I watched her, a new agonizing kind of pain twisting in my gut. I had said the words. The truth was out, but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. And I also knew that you would never cross that line with me because I'm not a man. Grace was completely still, her eyes wide and wet, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared at me, the confusion on her face slowly giving way to something else. A dawning realization, a quiet, deep hurt. For a long, painful moment, the only sound in the room was the soft whir of the refrigerator. At last she found her voice, so soft it barely carried. I'm sorry, she whispered, hands shaking as she covered her face. I didn't think you felt that way about me. I should have known. The apology hit like a blow, confirmation of what I'd feared all along. I watched her, tears spilling freely, and felt a drained, heavy pity. She seemed so young in that moment, a girl who'd been gambling with her own heart and only now grasping the stakes. Yeah, I said, the word thin with resignation. I rose, each movement slow and deliberate. I snagged my keys from the table and headed for the door. I think I'm going to sleep somewhere else tonight. We both need some space. I didn't glance back. I opened the door and stepped into the cold, silent hallway, leaving behind the beautiful, bewildered woman and the glittering diamond. The night air stunned my lungs. I walked fast, my footsteps beating a lonely rhythm along the pavement. I flagged a cab and slid into the back seat. And the first thought that surfaced was a motel, a plain, quiet room where I could be alone with my thoughts. I gave the driver the address to a trailside motor lodge, my voice flat and empty. The cab had just started to roll when my phone buzzed. A text lit the screen. Had a really good time tonight. It was Naomi. Warmth, small and unexpected, spread through my chest. I quickly typed a reply. Me, too. Almost instantly, she called. Hey, she said, her voice soft and warm. I was just thinking about you. Glad you got home. Okay. I'm not home yet, I said, my voice catching in my throat. I just got into it with Grace. A big fight. I'm about to go sleep in a motel. A pause stretched between us. The sound of the cab's engine and the distant city hum. Why don't you just come over to my place? I'll text you the address. You can crash on the couch. My first instinct was to say no, to not be a burden, to not bring my messy, complicated life into her clean, simple one. No, I don't want to burden you, I said, the words a rush of nervous energy. Naomi's laugh, a gentle, understanding sound, came through the phone. Maya, it's not a problem. Just helping out a friend. I felt a hot rush of emotion, a sudden, overwhelming wave of gratitude. A single tear traced a path down my cheek, and I quickly wiped it away. Okay, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Okay. Thank you, Naomi. I hung up the phone just as a new text message popped up. It was her address. I looked at the cab driver, and he glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Change of plans, I said, a small, weary smile on my face. I'm not going to the motel. I read him Naomi's address, the words a new brave prayer in the dark. The cab ride to Naomi's was quiet, a stark contrast to the emotional whirlwind of the last few hours. Grayford lights were a comforting blur, a moving kaleidoscope of color that helped to distract my mind. I was a bundle of conflicting emotions. The fresh raw pain of my confrontation with Grace mixed with the quiet warmth and relief of Naomi's invitation. When we arrived, Naomi was standing on her doorstep, waiting for me. She was wearing a soft, oversized sweater, and her hair, which had been in a messy bun all day, was now loose around her shoulders. She looked tired, but her smile was gentle and genuine. Hey, she said, her voice soft and low. She didn't hug me. She just stood there, her hands in her pockets, a quiet, patient presence. Hey, I said, my voice a little shaky. The reality of everything that had happened finally hit me, and I felt a fresh wave of tears welling up in my eyes. Naomi's expression softened. She reached out and gently took my hand, her thumb stroking the back of it in a slow, comforting rhythm. Come on in, she said, her voice a quiet, warm murmur. I made some tea. Her apartment was small but cozy, the air filled with the scent of chamomile and a faint hint of old books. There were potted plants on every surface, and a plush, colorful rug covered most of the floor. It was a comforting, inviting space, the complete opposite of Grace's pristine, minimalist, and now emotionally charged apartment. I sat on her couch, a soft, worn piece of furniture that felt like a hug. Naomi handed me a mug of tea, the ceramic warm against my cold hands. I took a sip, the sweet, earthy liquid a soothing balm to my raw throat. So, she said, sitting down a respectful distance from me, do you want to talk about it? And just like that, the dam broke all over again. I told her everything. The years of unspoken love, the stolen kisses, the brutal honesty in the living room, the huge glittering ring. I told her about the final devastating apology, the one that had cut me to the bone. Naomi listened, her gaze steady and unwavering, her hand still resting gently on mine. She didn't offer advice or interrupt. She just let me talk, let me cry, let me fall apart. When I was finally done, when I was just a tired, drained mess on her couch, she squeezed my hand again. It's going to be okay, Maya, she said, her voice a quiet, confident whisper. You're finally free. I looked at her, at the beautiful, compassionate woman who had just paid for my dinner and now let me fall apart on her couch. And in that moment, I realized something. My heart wasn't breaking, it was healing. And the person helping to mend it was sitting right there holding my hand. I leaned my head against her shoulder, and she didn't pull away. She just wrapped her arm around me, a warm, comforting presence. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I fell asleep without a single thought of Grace. A few weeks had passed, and the world had started to feel a little more real again. I had moved into a small, sun-filled studio apartment of my own, a space that was entirely mine. It was filled with my books, my art, and a few pieces of furniture I had salvaged and refinished myself. It was a quiet, private world, a stark contrast to the beautiful but suffocating space I had shared with Grace. Our friendship had found a new, different rhythm. It was a friendship with distance, with boundaries. We'd still text and we'd occasionally grab coffee, but the late-night talks and the shared blankets were a thing of the past. The conversation was always light, never straying into the murky waters of our past. She mentioned Ethan sometimes, and I'd listen with a quiet, polite smile. The diamond on her finger was a constant, glittering reminder of the life she had chosen, and I was finally learning to accept it. My new life, however, was about Naomi. Our relationship was a quiet, slow-burning fire, a gentle warmth that was a welcome change from the chaotic inferno with Grace. We went on dates. To Moss and Moon Books where we'd get lost for hours. To the Velvet Lantern where the music was soft and soulful. And to a Wren Park where we'd just sit and talk, sharing secrets and stories. One Friday at 8:20 p.m. after a long week at work, Naomi came over to my new apartment for a quiet night in. We cooked dinner together, the small space filled with the scent of garlic and wine. We sat on the floor surrounded by pillows and ate. Our conversation was a comfortable, easy hum. "I love this space," she said, her voice a soft murmur as she looked around my apartment. "It's so you." I smiled, a genuine, easy smile that was just for her. "Yeah," I said, a wave of pride washing over me. "It's home." The day of the wedding arrived with a quiet, nervous energy. My apartment was a whirlwind of hairspray, makeup, and quiet conversation. Naomi was in the bathroom, her soft singing a gentle hum in the background. I was sitting at my vanity putting on my makeup, my hands trembling a little. I looked at my reflection in the mirror at the woman who was about to go to her ex-best friend's wedding with her new girlfriend. I had never felt more loved or more ready. I was a beautiful, confident, happy woman. And it was all because of the woman who was now singing softly in my bathroom. Naomi walked out a few minutes later, and my breath caught in my throat. She was wearing a simple, elegant black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. Her hair, which was usually in a messy bun, was now loose around her shoulders in soft, beautiful waves. She looked stunning. She looked like a woman who was in love. She smiled at me, a soft, confident smile that reached her eyes. "Ready?" she asked, her voice a quiet, confident murmur. I just nodded, my eyes a little wet. I stood up, walked over to her, and took her hand. "More than ready," I said, my voice a little shaky. "But I do have one last question for you." She just smiled, a gentle, patient smile. "What is it, Maya?" "I just want to be clear," I said, a nervous, hopeful note in my voice. "I want you to be there with me as my girlfriend. Is that okay? Is that what you want, too?" Naomi's smile widened, a brilliant, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face. She leaned in and gently kissed me, a soft, slow, deliberate kiss. "Maya," she whispered, her voice a gentle laugh. "That's exactly what I want more than anything." She kissed me again, and this time it was a deep, unhurried, mind-blowing kiss. A kiss that was a promise, a confession, and a prayer all rolled into one. A kiss that was a final beautiful ending to one story and the beginning of a whole new one. We broke apart, our foreheads resting against each other, our breathing a little heavy. We looked at each other, and in that moment, the wedding, the dress, the fear, it all faded into the background. There was only us, only our new beautiful, honest love. "Okay," I said, my voice a soft, confident whisper. "Now I'm ready." She smiled, a beautiful, radiant smile that was just for me. She said, "Let's go then," taking my hand and walking toward the door. "Let's go show them what happiness looks like." The wedding was at a beautiful old estate, the kind of place you only see in movies. The garden was a riot of color, and the air was thick with the scent of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. The whole place was buzzing with the happy, celebratory energy of a wedding. Naomi and I walked in, our arms linked, a quiet, confident unit. I felt a few eyes on us, but it didn't bother me. I wasn't there to make a statement. I was there to support a friend, to be with the woman I loved, and to celebrate a new chapter in my life. We found our seats, a small table near the back, and settled in. I looked around, taking in the scene. Grace was radiant, a vision in white. She was laughing, her loud, beautiful laugh echoing through the garden. Ethan was standing next to her, his hand on the small of her back, his eyes fixed on her face with a look of adoration. I watched them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a genuine quiet joy for her. The old painful ache was gone. The jealousy and the longing were just distant echoes, faded memories. I looked at Naomi, at the beautiful woman who was sitting next to me, her hand resting gently on my knee, and I felt a wave of profound gratitude. I had found my own happiness, my own kind of love, and it was all because of the woman who was now singing softly in my bathroom. I leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Thank you for being here with me." She just smiled, a soft, warm smile that was just for me. She whispered back, "I wouldn't be anywhere else." And then she leaned in and kissed me. A slow, gentle kiss that was a quiet public declaration of our love. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, I saw Grace walking toward us. My heart, which had been so calm, started to beat a little faster. This was it, the moment I had both dreaded and looked forward to. Grace was alone. Her new husband chatted with some friends nearby. Her smile, which had been so big and brilliant, was a little smaller now. She looked at Naomi, a flicker of something I couldn't quite name in her eyes. And then her gaze settled on me. "Maya," she said, her voice a little shaky, "I'm so glad you came." I smiled, a real genuine smile. "I wouldn't have missed it for the world," I said, my voice soft and steady. I looked at her, the beautiful woman in white, and I knew with a quiet certainty that I had truly moved on. "You look beautiful, Grace, and you deserve all the happiness in the world." She looked at me, her eyes wide and a little teary. She said, "Thank you, Maya." She looked at Naomi and then back at me. "I'm so glad you're happy." "I am," I said, my voice full of a quiet, profound joy. "More than you know." And then she was gone, walking away to rejoin her husband. And the chapter was over. I looked at Naomi, and she squeezed my hand, a silent, powerful promise. I was finally free. And the next chapter of my life, my beautiful, honest, true life, was just beginning. And that's the end of the story. Thank you so much for watching and being a part of this journey. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. Until next time.